All right, so this is our 4 o'clock special meeting of the Board of Public Works on the 30th of November. And specifically, we're here to receive the report from GHD on the long-range study for the wastewater treatment plant. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over.
So I'm actually sorry to interrupt. Technically, we need a motion to enter to enter public session.
From executive session.
Oh, okay. I thought we did it upstairs, but we'll do it again. All right. Do I have a motion to go into general session?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. All right. So, we got some feedback. Okay.
We get to hear you twice. That's the good news.
No, it's not. I know that. All right. Okay. So at this point, then, I think we're going to turn it over to GHD. We have Tom Biaglia and Jeff to present to us. So.
Good afternoon, Jeff Sturdivant from GHD. Just want to thank everyone for inviting us to come over and deliver this report. We've had a good run in putting this report together and a lot of engagement from the BPW team. So we're here to present this report. I'm going to turn it over to Tom Biaggioli, our project manager.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I have some slides prepared to take you through the key findings. If those are ready. Okay, excellent. So good afternoon. My name is Tom Biaggioli. I'm the project manager. So I have some slides queued up. Today I'll be taking you through the project background and the scope, the concept development.
Can we turn the lights down? I'm sorry.
Excellent. So as I was saying, I'll talk you through the project background and the scope, talk you through the concept development, the concept evaluation, and the next stages as we see them. This is all information that's already in the report. So if you've already had a chance to review that, then this will be familiar.
It's just to interrupt. So the slides and the report are actually available on the BPW website for anyone who wants to download them or follow online. So go ahead, Tom.
Thanks. I'll start with some project background. So as I'm sure you're aware, the BPW has the wastewater treatment facility here in Lewes, and it's located at a low elevation site close to the beach. And that site is vulnerable to sea level rise and flood damage. And the BPW and discussion with GHD looking to evaluate options to mitigate that flood risk and/or relocate the facility entirely. Sussex County has an existing agreement in place with the BPW to transfer wastewater flows over to the treatment facility when demand is lower in Lewes during the winter months. And the county has indicated that they may be interested in expanding that relationship and working with the BPW to establish additional shared facilities for wastewater treatment. GHD was appointed to develop and evaluate upgrade options that will provide increased resilience for wastewater treatment within the BPW service area, including considering options for further collaboration with the county. As we've discussed, our analysis has been summarized in the long-range planning study conceptual evaluation report, a copy of which is now available, which has been provided to the board for review. And I'm going to summarize the key findings today. Any questions on that? And if there are any questions at any stage, please just let me know and I can forward. But if not, I'm going to the scope in a little bit more detail. So GHD evaluated a total of 6 upgrade options to increase the resilience of wastewater treatment here in Lewes, specifically to stormwater events and sea level rise. The following options were evaluated. So option 1 was hardening of the existing wastewater treatment facility, maintaining the same site, providing upgrades required to the processes so that it would be suitable to stay in operation up to the project planning horizon of 2050. and also stormwater resilience upgrades. So looking at perimeter barriers, flood proofing of individual buildings, and on-site fuel storage for emergency events. So that's option one, focused on the existing site, increasing resilience. The option two series of options all involve relocating the wastewater treatment facility to a high elevation site within the greater Lewes area. And they vary in the proposed discharge methodology. So option 2A would be relocation to a new site and discharge of treated effluent via land application, spray irrigation or RIBS. Option 2B would be the relocation, but transferring the treated effluent back to the existing permitted outfall on the canal here in Lewes. And option 2C would be relocation and then discharge of the treated effluent to a new ocean outfall off the coast plus the state park. Those are the option two series. Option three, two sub options in option three involve a partnership with Sussex County. So those options would involve consolidating the Lewes flows, transferring them to a new joint wastewater treatment facility within Sussex County. And again, they would vary in the proposed discharge. Under option 3A, the combined treated flows from the new shared facility with Sussex County would be transferred back to the existing permitted outfall for discharge of the canal. And then under option 3B, the treated effluent will be discharged via a new constructed wetland within Sussex County. Any questions on those before we get into the detail? No. If not, then I'll start working through the concepts themselves. So I can draw your attention to the schematic diagram up in the top left side. We have a similar diagram for all the options, and I'll start just by talking you through that. So here we show the existing Lewes collection network split into the two subcatchments, so the northern network and the southern network, either side of the canal. And each one terminates in a lift pump station 8 and pump station 4 respectively. And those two pump stations transfer the raw wastewater to the existing wastewater treatment facility. And it's then discharged by the existing permitted outfall. So at a conceptual level, option one would keep that basic network arrangement the same, keep the existing collection facilities and pump stations and the existing wastewater treatment facility site. But the works that would be required are really split into two categories. One are process upgrades, and the second is stormwater flooding resilience. So because under the other option scenarios, we're looking at new sites, which would have to be designed, be operational up to a planning horizon of 2050. Under option one, in order to make it a like-for-like comparison, for option one, we looked at the process upgrades required to maintain the existing site functional up to that same planning horizon of 2050. And through going through the existing processes and the key equipment, we've identified that as part of these upgrades, the headworks facilities would need to be upgraded. You need better flow equalization, specifically more flow equalization volume, manage flows, expanded aeration basins to provide 12 hours of storage for average daily flow. Installation of the 4th MBR cassette to increase the treatment capacity beyond 2 MGD, and replacement of the existing UV reactors like for like. So that's on the process side, and then we get to the flood mitigation. And within that, we have two components. One is to protect the facility from runoff from the surrounding areas. And to do that, I'll draw your attention to the diagram on the top right. We've come up with a conceptual arrangement for a perimeter barrier. So where possible, and we're shown in the light blue shading, we're proposing a compacted fill bund arrangement, compacted arrangement around the site to raise the threshold of the entire site up above the 100-year flood elevation with some additional freeboard. Now, in order to get the slopes on the side of that trapezoidal section, that becomes quite a wide arrangement. It's over 30 feet, and that's not feasible in all parts of the site. So in some areas, rather than having the compacted fill, we're showing a sheet pile wall to provide the same perimeter barrier, but in a smaller footprint. Now, having raised the threshold around the site, clearly you still need to get in and out of it, and so we've also come up with an arrangement for 2 vehicle access ramps, which is kind of the dark blue lines, which I don't have a pointer, but hopefully you can see those. And that's a way to get large trucks that you need for the operation and maintenance of the site in and over the barrier, so you can still continue you can still continue that traffic to and from the site.
Tom, do you mind speaking just a little bit louder into the mic,
Yes.
just for
absolutely.
everybody that's online?
Sure.
Thank you.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so that's the a basic overview of the perimeter flood barrier. So that protects the site from external runoff, and then you need to be able to discharge runoff that falls within the site.
Given storms that we've had, and not necessarily here, but in around this area, how comfortable do you feel with, and I know we talk about it more later, the 100-year floodplain elevation plan?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in order to come up with that basis of design elevation for the flood, we've looked at a combination of things, including the FEMA mapping, which is the 100-year flood. We've also, and there's a whole section in the report, looking at both expected sea level rise and coastal subsidence, which gives us an idea of what that net flood elevation may be in the future. And then we also consider it best practice to include some freeboard above that. So 2 feet for all buildings and 3 feet for equipment. That's the current industry best practice to provide a resilient flood elevation to 100 years. It's all based on statistical models and confidence levels, but we would consider that a robust approach based on the data we have at the moment, the best projections we have in terms of net sea level rise.
Have some of the storms that have hit up north of us and south of us, have they expanded or gone beyond that 100-year floodplain?
Yeah, yes. When there have been really major storms with allowances, not allowances, but considering the storm surges, it can get above that flood elevation. Yes.
So, but in your opinion, are these the right numbers to look at then, do you think?
These are the numbers that you can realistically plan for and you can provide resilience for. But it's all based on a statistical storm. So this is for the 100-year storm statistically. But if you get the 200-year storm, then these will be inadequate.
Understand. Okay,
And this is something that we factor into the evaluation. Sorry.
thank you.
If there is a major flood event that would be contained or controlled by the perimeter work is being suggested, is it possible that the result is a rising water table within the site or pressure of the flood itself looking for a release that either can be estimated, calculated?
Yes, absolutely. So I don't have it shown on the slide here, but we've come up with a conceptual arrangement for that barrier. And that would involve a tow, basically a trench below one side of the trapezoid with an impermeable liner. And the idea there is exactly as you say, to cut off the below ground flow path from the floodwater to stop it driving flow into the site from underneath. And likewise with the sheet pile arrangement, it would go into the below grade section would be deep enough again to cut off that below ground flow path so that you don't just force the all the way through.
So all of your estimates and everything else at the moment are the plant itself,
Yes.
making sure it's hardened. The state put on a presentation about 4 or 5 years ago about 100-year estimate, 100-year sea level rise, just the sea level rise. And the estimate was 4.6 feet. And the problem was the plant was fine, but there was 2 feet of water between basically the beach and the town.
Yes.
And so consequently, then you wouldn't be able to get there. So the plant would be beautiful, but nobody would be able to operate it. So was that taken into consideration?
It is noted in the evaluation that whilst this keeps the major equipment going and like you say, the plant will be okay, the whole area around it may not be accessible.
Mhm.
And that's factored into when we evaluate the concepts. We score it
Okay.
down on that. So
John boat.
Pardon me?
John boat.
Yeah, both,
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
Right.
the Earl boat.
Happy to rent it out.
And we give them out for a larger fuel capacity for the generator
Mhm.
to run for the 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
Hour, so
Is that the duration of isolation, if you will, that's expected or calculated for the hardening that the access would not supposedly be available for 3 to 5 days? Is that the time, is that the,
That's an
Projection.
assumption we've made at this concept level.
and why would there not be the ability of a boat or a high-wheel truck or an airboat or a Zodiac rather, to access and deliver what might be needed other than fuel heavy, which could be planned in advance to have a fuel truck added or something along those lines. But the access doesn't seem to be addressed, possible access mechanisms and a duration. And it seems to be dismissed as if, well, you can't get to the plant, so let's move on and go in another direction.
Well, it's actually one of the things that is discussed in the MCA portion of this,
Right.
as far as the pros and cons of the different sites. But it is a real issue. But it is addressed in other parts of the report that if this option was chosen, that would have to be addressed. This is a concept level to get down to a screening of what we want to go and do more investigation on.
Thank you.
Okay,
And I would say that part of the planning would be that if the Lewes went with this option and we saw a big hurricane coming in, we're going to see sea level rise, that there would be a plan by the operations team to have food there and staff there available to stay for the duration. And, you would access it with boats for that 2 to 3 days if you had to.
that would be, but with 100-year, the one that I saw the state put the presentation on and that was permanent. The sea level rise wasn't just a day, it was it's 2 feet of water between the plant and the city. And the sea level rose 4.6 feet and it stayed that way. It wasn't just up and down. At least that was my understanding.
And this takes into effect the sea level rise till 2050, which was the planning horizon.
Okay, good.
So not 2001 or
Yeah, so it's
100
not
years.
100 years, so
not
it's,
100,
yeah.
2050 is what we
I think they're
calculated sea
backed
level
off
rise.
100 years now, and if you saw the same presentation, they might be using 50 years.
Well, for facilities of this type, we probably wouldn't plan for 100 years out because they're only going to last so long.
Right.
The equipment's going to last 20
Well,
years.
yes, it's plant, it wouldn't make any difference. You're right. It's in 50 years, it's plants either not going to be there or it's going to be somewhere else.
Well, and at the 100-year point or the more drastic floods, there are larger issues than just the plant,
Right,
like the
This town.
viability of Lewes.
exactly.
I mean, the
Right.
entire Lewes, I'm not talking about just the beach.
Yeah,
It's, at that point, you have much, much larger decisions to make.
Thank you.
And again, I'm just trying to understand the math. So, and I know it's on a different page, on page 17 in the other one, but it talks about the 2015 FEMA 100-year flood site, 7 feet. I got that. But below that, it's projected 2050 and it shows 2.13. I assume that's in addition to the 7.
Yes.
So in less than, 30 years, we would be in a position where it's not 7, but it's actually 7 plus the 2.13.
Yes.
That's on the high end of the state's prediction for 2050, isn't that?
Yeah.
the case?
Yes. We've used the high end of the curve. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you remember the sea level rise curves, there's 3 of them. And for, people typically use, like, for planning purposes, the mid-level, but for infrastructure or critical infrastructure, it's the high level curve.
And is that the 2050 curve that's here?
Yes.
For the high level?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So yes, clearly a major residual issue with option one, which is picked up in the analysis, in the evaluation later, is that it's down in a flood prone area still. So even if we can make the site resilient, the broader area, there's still clearly going to be a major issue. Any other questions on option one before I get into option two? Okay, so option 2A. And again, I'll draw your attention to the schematic in the top left. So again, the collection network remains the same, split into northern and southern, but the flows are consolidated in a different way. So lift station number 4, which currently pumps directly to the wastewater treatment facility, that would pump to the lift station 8 site, where a new upgraded pump station would be constructed to consolidate the flows from the Lewes collection network and then transfer them to a new site. For the purposes of concept development, we've based everything on a new pump station at the LS8 site on the basis that the LS4 site is right in the center of the city. It'll be much more disruptive to do large construction there and much more visible to the stakeholders, whereas LS8 is at least slightly away from the center of town. So from that new upgraded pump station, the combined raw wastewater flows would go to a new high elevation site, which would be an activated sludge site with effluent filtration. And under option 3A, the treated effluent would be discharged by a land application via spray irrigation. The other diagram that we're showing here on the right-hand side is a schematic arrangement, approximately to scale, showing what a new facility would look like. So we have a headworks building, we have the aeration basins, flow equalization basins, clarifiers, disinfection, UV disinfection, effluent filters, and then the 4 large boxes you see there are specifically for the land application. Some of the regulations require 45 days of treated effluent storage, and then an effluent pump station to go to the spray irrigation facilities.
And I don't know if we mentioned this, but lift station 8 is at the end of American Legion Road, little brick and mortar building. Just so that everybody understands, 4 and 8, 4 is next to the Gills Neck Road and Savannah Road. 8 is at the end of American Legion.
This option requires a land purchase.
Yes.
Where did you do those proxies? What did you use as a proxy for your real estate costs? How far out are you going?
Yeah, so we're working with Austin. The BPW provided some guidance cost to GHD. So for this application, which clearly compared to option 2B and 2C requires a lot more land, there was an assumption that it would be further out from the center of the city, and so some figures were provided to us to use for a property in that area.
You know, how many acres would that get you? 12.5 million.
Well, it depends on which area. So the way that it was broken down is you have areas closer to the incorporated city limits, and then we have land that's kind of out past Route 1 and the 19958. Those two different $12.5 million get you a big difference, big range. Obviously, the closer you get in, the less land you buy, which then changes kind of what type of methodology you use as far as 2A, 2B, and 2C.
So what basically acreage did you come up with?
For option 2A, 250 acres.
250 acres.
That's spray irrigation.
That's for the treatment facility itself. So the key treatment facilities require about 20 acres, and then another 230 acres for the land application.
Hans, does that amount of land sound about right for what we're trying to do? I know you guys have done those kind of things before. Actually impress you as well.
Put it in perspective, we have an application pending to the Department of Natural Resources for the Wolf Neck permit renewal at 1.75, and we have 330 acres. So it's on the light side of my opinion.
Okay.
And what did you come up with roughly for 30 acres? Just to do anything with?
No,
300.
we have 330 available.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Wolf Neck.
No, I understand, but I'm also trying to get some kind of a feel for what let's just say the 20 acres for a plant, which is not, as far as I know, in any of these.
It is, yes. It's included in all of the option 2 concepts, allow for a land purchase of at least 20 acres. And it's
I'm going.
included in the.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, you got.
Yeah, no, I have it right in front of me. But well, never mind, when it comes to it, but I'm looking at land purchase for option number 2, spray is 212,500,000. I'm looking for land purchase for option 2B, 100,000. Well, I mean, 100,000, 1 million.
Yeah.
So you're saying that we could, you're estimating we would pay $1 million for 20 acres.
Yeah, yes. Using the figures
Okay.
that were used, yeah.
All right, well, okay, thank you.
And if you could, you'd have to have neighbors that wouldn't mind you.
Right, yeah.
Water treatment plant.
Well, find
There is
something,
that aspect as well.
find 20 acres for $1 million and you
Yeah, let me
no,
know.
you let me know right now.
I'll be right over.
Right now. Okay, so go ahead, sorry.
Any other questions on 2A? So for the option 2B, so again, consolidate the flows in Lewes in the same way at an upgraded pump station number 8, transferred to a new high elevation site. And this time, rather than land application, there'll be a treated effluent pump station, which will transfer the flows back to the existing permitted outfall. And the diagram I'm showing on this one is actually common to all of the option 2 and the option 3 concepts. And it shows a schematic arrangement for the new consolidated pump station at the LS8 site. So as Austin was saying, it's at the corner of American Legion Road and Savannah Road. The blue piping is the existing gravity mains that go into the existing pump station. And the concept is you could construct a new larger pump station offline with new force mains to and from, and then connect in at the last moment to do the majority of the work offline. Any questions on this as a concept?
This one increased the footprint in the floodplain.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
But the new pump station would be built to be, resilient and higher and watertight.
Doc.
And battery powered mowers. But,
They forgot to put the dock in, but that's cheap.
Okay. And then option 2C, again, the variation here is the means of discharging the treated effluent. So from the new high elevation site, there would again be a treated effluent pump station, but rather than going back to the existing outfall, we've developed a concept where there'll be a new ocean outfall. See the graphic on the right-hand side. You see a pipe coming in at the bottom left in green, past the existing treatment facilities, and then going along Cape Henlopen Drive, which this would go through the state park, but within an existing paved road until you get to the existing parking lot close to the beach, and then a new section of ocean outfall will be required. And based on, and we've made an assumption that that would be a 6,000 linear foot ocean outfall based on comparable systems in the
Is that what
region.
Rehoboth has, roughly?
Yes.
But we
So-
would still have to harden the wastewater treatment plant with this example.
Pardon me?
You'd still have to harden the wastewater treatment plant.
No. So this is consolidating the flows up to a new high elevation site.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay,
Mhm.
got
Yeah.
it, got it.
All the 2s are
Yeah.
a new site.
Yeah, thanks.
We have to be constructed prior to the rest. No,
Right.
don't give him the
Don't give it
microphone.
the mic, no.
Well, I also see it that one, there's no county costs that's shared in that ocean outfall. I didn't notice that one in this structure.
Rent some space.
But our flow agreement allows that if there's any increase in capacity that would be dedicated by the county has the right to approach the board and pay for those costs. And then on the land piece, just to clarify, we're looking at parcels. When we say 19958, you take your line of delineation as Route 1. You have east of Route 1 and west of Route 1. Huge difference in cost to acquire land.
Yeah, sure, but I mean, still, where are you gonna find 250 contiguous acres? I mean,
Oh, they don't have to be contiguous. You could have, 50 acres over here
Oh.
and pipe it to it. So
okay,
ideally.
that makes sense. Yeah. I get you.
Ideally, be one
Yeah,
location.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
This is option 2C. So clearly there will be a lot of challenges with getting an outfall like that constructed and permitted. But we consider it a technically a feasible alternative, and therefore we wanted to include it so that we've got a good robust comparison. Okay. Now we get on to the option 3 concepts, starting with option 3A. So option 3 involves a partnership with Sussex County. So again, I'll start by talking you through the schematic in the top left. So again, as with option 2, we consolidate the Lewes flows at an upgraded pump station at LS8. And this time it would pump to a new shared facility, a city-county new wastewater treatment facility to be constructed at the Wolf Neck site. Now, a key aspect of these arrangements is the BPW Sussex County boundary, which is shown indicatively on that diagram. So under the terms of the existing wastewater transfer agreement, there is a defined scope boundary, and each party pays costs for new infrastructure either side of that boundary. And that really comes into it in terms of the responsibilities for the costs.
Tom, can I just clarify one thing? You said shared facility. It's going to be a county facility. We wouldn't share the ownership. We would share the use.
Correct. And yeah, absolutely a very important point. So it'd be a facility used by both. Yep. County owned. And yeah.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, under option 2, they would be BPW facilities with shared use with the county. Option 3 would be county facilities with shared use by BPW.
Wait a minute. My understanding is with the county, 3A is they would use our outfall. I mean, we would just decommission the plant, but they would be using our outfall.
The outfall would wind up being transferred to the county.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, is that what it says there? Treated plant Wolf Neck to relocate outfall location.
Yeah.
So you use our permit, but they would move the outfall.
The permit would be transferred to the county.
But just physically
No.
to
The
the,
physical outfall is what I'm asking
but
about.
it would be transferred to the other side of the canal. It'd be at the same
Okay.
location.
That's
on the
my
canal.
question.
Okay.
I understand
Yes.
we would give them, they would get our permit, but they're going to relocate the physical outfall that's there now.
To the other side of the canal,
That's-
right directly across from where it is.
I got it. And that's exactly what I wanted.
Okay, but let me run you through all the works that we've included in this option. So it's split into 2 categories. So the BPW responsibility in terms of the capital works, and that would be the new raw wastewater pump station, where we have the consolidated flows from the BPW network, and a portion of the raw wastewater force main from the pump station to the existing agreed scope boundary, which is at the intersection of Rhodeline Avenue and Guildford Road. And the rest of the works would be the county's responsibility. And that would include the rest of the raw wastewater force main from the scope boundary to the Wolf Neck site, a new combined wastewater treatment facility, obviously the major ticket item, the treated effluent pump station, and the treated effluent force main from Wolf Neck to the relocated outfall. And the relocated outfall is located very close to the existing scope boundary, and therefore the county will be responsible for the full length of the treated effluent force main. And then, as indicated on the schematic, the existing outfall will be relocated at the same point in the canal, but on the opposing bank. And the other diagram we're showing here is an extract from the county's GIS, which shows existing piping. So the red line at the top is the existing transfer pipe, which the county uses to transfer flows to the BPW treatment facilities. And under option 3A and under option 3B, this would be replaced with a new raw wastewater pipe going in the opposite direction. It would then connect into the county's existing grid, where we're indicating the 16-inch force main, and then it would work its way through existing piping via the 30-inch force main to the Wolf Neck site. The county also has other existing piping, which is not currently in use, indicated in the dashed purple line, the 24-inch pipeline, which could be used for a portion of the treated effluent force main, as indicated in the diagram. And from that location to the new relocated outfall, a new pipe would be required.
And I apologize because I only got through a small portion of this because of some personal reasons. As it relates to our permit, we are very much below the standards in our permit. We are better than our permit. How does the county come up on that point?
So the analysis, so we've included some analysis in the report, which indicates that if with the increased flows, how best to explain it? So we've demonstrated that with the type of treatment process that we're proposing, with the existing permit limits, you could increase the flow and still meet the permit limits. Does that answer your question?
No.
Oh.
So in 3A,
Yes.
so if you look at our standards, that what we have of what goes through the outfall pipe,
Yes.
and you look at the standards of what, if I'm just talking 3A, what goes through the pipe for the county. If that was coming from the county versus from us, how much different is the waste that's, not waste, the effluent that's coming out of the pipe?
You're not talking about volume, you're talking about quality of it.
Both,
Okay.
both.
Yeah.
Nutrient loading.
Yes,
Yes.
because if the nutrient's higher and there's more coming out, there's a doubling effect.
Yeah, our approach here was that the current facility that Lewes has a waste load allocation for nitrogen, phosphorus, BOD, TSS.
Yes.
And so what we decided is in the flow for 2050, the plant currently has a capacity of 1.5 million gallons a day. And for just the city of Lewes, we looked at the build out for the city, and we realized that was going to be needing 1.75 MGD. So we included a capacity of 1.75
Every lot
MGD.
was taken. Yes, I got
Yes.
it.
So and we kept the original waste load allocation of the 1.5 MGD facility. Okay, so the plan was we're going to do better treatment for the 1.75 MGD just for the city and stay within the permit now. So that is what we held for 1A or option 1, option 2A, option 2B, and option 2C. Okay, because it's still a 1.75 MGD.
Right.
But
I was looking at 3A. That's why I was
okay,
asking. about it.
so I'm bringing you home to 3A.
All right, I appreciate
Okay.
that. Talk slower.
I'm setting the baseline, setting the baseline.
All
So coming over to 3A, we have the 1.75 MGD capacity that Lewes still needs.
Mhm.
And the county needs 1.75 MGD too. So we end up, instead of a 1.75 MGD facility, we end up with a 3.5 MGD facility, for which we have designed that facility to meet the waste load allocation of your existing permit at 1.5 MGD.
And I'm asking a completely different question. I'm not looking at our permits capability.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the capability of the plant.
Yeah, I would
Under
say,
3A.
yeah, under 3A, the effluent capability of that treatment plant is a tertiary treatment plant. It would meet or exceed the current treatment levels of your facility at this time.
1.75, current plant would handle that.
No, the option 3, the treatment plant that we have costed out here would exceed the effluent. It would do better treatment than what your facility is currently doing now.
Okay,
It has to, because it has double the capacity. So it's going to do better treatment, but the total load going into the canal would be the same,
so the volume
would be
is same.
double.
Oh, double.
The volume would be double, but the nutrients, pounds of
Okay.
nutrients going in would
Okay.
be exactly what they are under your permit now.
But twice as much. Hans, is that an accurate statement? I thought 3A had a higher impact than that.
Okay, that the third engineer is trying to explain.
Yeah, well, you talk slower. That helps me.
Obviously, you're looking at a 1.5 MGD permit today. Let's just say you do nothing to your treatment plant and you go to 1.75. You can see you're increasing it by 12.5%.
Right.
That's just straight up math.
How'd I get?
So let's just say we build the exact same plant you have and we're going to 3.5, which means now you're obviously at 125%. So that would be, you keep everything the same, all concentrations stay the same, but you are at the technological edge of treatment today. if you double the flow, you cannot keep the same pounds. What we committed to, and that's your former president, former chairman, President, we would like to say, we are committed to meet the TMDL and the permit limits as they exist today in the future for 2050. And that's, I think, better than you can expect anybody else to say.
There we.
We'll give the fourth engineer a chance to.
Yeah, it may take 5 people for me. I'm sorry,
There will be, the load will go up
because of the volume.
because of the volume.
But I'm
Okay.
saying is the water
But
the
the
same
permit-
level?
But the permit is still below our permit level.
So, and that's the point. It's below our permit, but the water that will be coming out, forget the fact that it's double the amount. Forget that for just a second. The water that's coming out under 3A isn't as good as what we have coming out today.
No, that's not what we're saying at all. The level of treatment stays the same.
It doesn't exceed the permit, but does it exceed our current numbers that we have on our reports for nitrogen and everything else?
But in terms of concentration or total loads, so the total loads would increase, but the concentrations would stay at a similar level or improve.
And that's in 3A.
That's good.
Okay.
So I have a question. I'll go back to number 1, hardening.
Yeah,
You
that again.
say we're estimating 1.75 million MGDs, and does the current plant as it exists, can it handle that?
No, and that's why we included the schedule of process upgrades as part of the
Okay,
concept,
all right,
including the
good.
extra MBR cassette, et cetera.
I understand. Okay, good.
Review now.
No, I'm gonna read though.
Exactly,
And I apologize because I wasn't able to read all this in advance.
No, that's okay. There's which direct you to the section. It's up front. I don't have the section number to hand, but we show some graphics with total waste load allocation and concentrations at different flow rates. Which hopefully figure 6.
Okay.
It's good discussion. Any other questions on 3A? So option 3B, similar concept. So flows are consolidated in Lewes at the upgraded pump station, and the BPW is responsible for that pump station and the raw wastewater force main up to the scope boundary. So, and this is important when we get to the costs, the BPW responsibility is the same for option 3A and for option 3B in terms of the capital costs. Sussex County under this option would again be responsible for the wastewater force main from the scope boundary to the new site and the new treatment facility. But this time, they would also be responsible for constructing a new constructed wetland with vertical discharge after the tertiary treatment process, which would discharge flows within the county.
Mhm.
And actually the graphic I'm showing here on the right-hand side, this is for the upgraded pump station 8, which again is common for all option 2, option 3 concepts. And it speaks to, I think, a comment that was provided earlier. We're just showing the key elevations here on the new pump station. And it's a little bit fuzzy on the screen I'm seeing, but we've increased all the threshold elevations up above the project flood design elevation, so that you still have a robust site in the future. I don't know if that speaks to the comment they made earlier.
So one key thing that you probably should bring up is on option 3, regardless of the treatment, it's also discharging on the outgoing tide only, which is different than we're doing now.
Right.
So we're not retaining in the canal with it the amount of flow.
Mm-hmm.
So it allows for better flushing of the canal out.
Right, I understand.
Hans, correct me.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record and the public, not only the outgoing tide, but also the study and the county committed to a new, more in-depth canal study, which we've been discussing with DNIC.
But so that's another major factor of improving quality in the canal,
Right.
regardless of 3A or 3B. The constructed wetland, you still would only be discharging at, well, you have to have some minimum discharge to keep the wetland vibrant, but
That's
Yeah.
vertical, the wetlands is a vertical discharge.
Any other comments, questions on option 3B or option 3 overall, or any of the other concepts before we get into the evaluation?
No,
Okay, so that's an overview of the concepts themselves. Now I'll talk you through the evaluation process. The evaluation really has two major components. One is cost and one is non-cost criteria. I'll start by talking about the non-cost criteria. So we've developed a multi-criteria analysis, or an MCA, to evaluate each of the concepts based on a series of non-cost criteria. Now, I have the tables prepared to take you through each of those, which I'll come to in a moment. But we developed a series of criteria, and then we assigned each criterion a weighting to reflect the relative criticality of each one. So not all criteria are equal.
And is that weighting just based on your experience of doing these and the?
Yes, and
Okay.
that's essentially in our perception of the key goals of the project. And again, I have the information here, so I'm happy to take you through individually. But as a general approach, longer term impacts, so long term impacts to the community, water quality issues, resilience of wastewater treatment are generally assigned a higher weighting, so the more critical issues. Shorter term impacts, such as disruption that would only be during parts of the construction stage, or permitting complexity, we assign those a lower weighting, because whilst there'll be some short term pain with those, in the longer term, you can move past them. So the weightings work from 1 to 3, and I should have mentioned under the MCA, a high score is good. So more points means a more favorable concept. So the weightings go from 1 to 3. So the most critical items like water quality gets a 3, and some of the shorter term impacts get a 1. So they're still part of the analysis, it's still considered, but it's just a way of providing some better reflecting the priorities of what we're trying to do. Now, so I have the tables here to talk you through the criteria. You have a copy of the report. I'm happy to go through each step by step, each subcategory, and talk through them, or I can answer any specific questions you have, or I can talk about the general categories. I don't know what the preference is. I don't want to spend time if you've already read them and don't have questions.
yeah, I mean, it's a lot of them, but you have to read it.
Okay,
Yeah,
very good.
I understand.
No,
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure. Okay, excellent. So I'll talk you through the categories. So we have three sort of sections of evaluations, 3 sections of categories. The first one is permitting and schedule. And within that, we considered permitting complexity. So the expected volume and complexity of the permitting procedures, the delivery schedule, the overall timeframe required to implement the concept, property and easement acquisition, so the complexity of obtaining the required property and or easements for treatment facilities and conveyance piping, interagency and regulatory coordination, so the schedule risk associated with coordination and approvals from other political bodies such as the county, for example, or regulatory approvals. And within this category of evaluation, we assigned a greater weighting to the delivery schedule and the property and easement acquisition, and less so to the permitting complexity and the interagency regulation. And then there's a general approach to scoring, which is in the in the 3 right-hand columns. So if a concept gets a 1, that's the worst possible scoring. So for example, permitting complexity, a rating of 1 would be the complexity is greater than other options. A score of 3 would be average, so it's comparable, and rating of 5 would be the permitting complexity is less than other options. And so by going through in this methodical way, the aim is to quantitatively evaluate each of the concepts. Any questions on permitting and schedule before I go into the category? So the next category is community and environmental impacts. And within that, we looked at stakeholder impacts during the construction stage, so temporary impacts, stakeholder impacts long-term, so the long-term impacts to the community due to, for example, traffic, odor, and other factors, water quality impacts for the inland bays, so the likelihood that the proposed treatment process would negatively impact the water quality of the inland bays. And this is one of the highest priority categories, gets a weighting of 3. Overall environmental risk, again, a very high priority. So the likelihood of environmental impacts due to failure or flood damage at the treatment facilities or any of the associated facilities. So this is where the residual risk associated with option 1 really comes into the scoring. We looked at sustainability and energy and chemical use and land use within the city of Lewes. Any questions here? And the third category is operation and maintenance. So within this category, we have impact to the treatment facilities, operations during the construction phase, operational complexity, so the level of operational effort required to maintain treatment performance and the difficulty in obtaining qualified staff and resources. And that was identified as a very high priority evaluation criteria, so it gets a 3. And future flexibility, so the extent to which the proposed treatment and conveyance facilities can be adapted to meet the future environmental and compliance conditions. So before I get into the outcome of our evaluation, any further questions on the MCA process, the categories, criteria that we developed, or anything else? Okay, excellent. So having developed the criteria, we then went through and did the evaluation. And the key findings of the MCA are summarized below. As you can see, the scores shown graphically on the right-hand side. The immediate thing that is notable is the consistency of scoring amongst categories of options. So option 1 and option 2 concepts all get a very, very similar score, 65 and 66. And the option 3 concepts both get 95. So although the overall scores are the same, the build-up is different, which is what's shown in the different color bars. And this is what I'll talk you through now on the left-hand side. I'll just talk you through it. So option 3A and option 3B have the joint highest MCA scores. So on a non-cost basis, based on the criteria that we developed, those two are the most favorable concepts. So both get the same score, but as I noted, for different reasons. So option 3A scores higher for the permitting and schedule category. That's due to the relative uncertainty associated with the constructed wetland discharge arrangement under option 3B. So under option 3A, we pump back to the existing outfall. We know what the permit limits are. We have a better idea of what that may look like, whereas there would be some additional technical evaluation required to develop the constructed wetland arrangement concept. Option 3B scores higher for community and environmental impacts. So with that option, there's no need to transfer the treated effluent back to Lewes and discharge at the same point within the canal. Option 1 and option 2 concepts are very similar scores. So option 1 scores lower for community and environmental impact. And that really is due to the issues that were discussed here today earlier, and it's the residual flood risk at the existing site. And that's both from a perspective of you're relying on barriers to keep floodwaters out, and they are designed to a statistical storm level. And there's also the issues with access to the site if you are in a flooding scenario. So that's what really brings option 1 down back into line with option 2. So the option 2 concepts score lower for permitting and schedule, and that's due to the land acquisition requirements and the significant lengths of transfer force mains that would be required, which would be constructed predominantly in public roads. Option 2 scores particularly low in this category due to the permitting complexities that would be associated with the new ocean outfall and the approach pipeline within the state park. But option 2C does score higher in terms of community environmental impacts because the treated effluent is now taken well away from the canal straight out to sea. And a detailed breakdown and all the logic and rationale is included in the report. Any questions? If not, I'll move on to the other part of the concept evaluation, and that is cost. So I'll start by talking through actually the table at the bottom of the slide. In terms of the cost estimation, so an important point to note first, so the costs presented here and in the report are the costs incurred by the BPW only. So when we look at when we present these costs, it's only costs that will be the responsibility of the BPW. Costs incurred by Sussex County are not included in the scope of this analysis. And when we came up with the cost estimates, they have 2 components. One is the capital cost estimate to construct the new facilities, and the other is the 2050 net present value operation and maintenance cost. And in order to do this, we've estimated the operation and maintenance cost, the cost of equipment replacement, energy and chemical use that would be required up to that 2050 planning horizon with an allowance for inflation. And the aim here is to give you an idea of the total cost of each one of these concepts up to that 2050 planning horizon. And then we combine the two, so the initial capital cost plus the total estimated net present value of the O&M costs to give a project life cycle. And again, that's the total costs to the BPW. So working through them stage by stage, capital cost estimate for option 1, which is hardening the existing site, allowing for contingencies and other uplifts. We have that at 23 million. And then going to option 2, as you'd expect, it's significantly more up. They're all up over 100 million. Several factors here. I mean, the key one really is you've got to establish an entirely new treatment facility, as well as land acquisition. And a major component of the cost are also the transfer pipelines that are required to go from the existing consolidated pump station up to the new site. And then the option 3 arrangement, the option 3 concepts both have the same cost, because under each concept, BPW is responsible for the same amount of work, which is the pump station and the initial portion of the raw wastewater force main. And we have those both at 20 million. In terms of O&M, the key differentiator are the wastewater treatment facility O&M costs. Under option 1, we would harden the existing site, which is an MBR site, which costs more to maintain, as well as having higher costs for periodic upgrades of equipment. And that immediately puts the O&M costs for option 1 significantly higher than all the other options, which have been developed on the basis of having an aeration treatment, tertiary treatment process, which costs less to maintain. All of the option 2 concepts are relatively similar. There's slight variations due to the amount of pumping involved in each one. Option 3 comes in slightly less on the O&M costs than option 2. And that's, again, the difference is predominantly due to pumping costs. You'll notice on the graphic on the top left side, the dark blue portion of the bar are the O&M costs for running the facility itself. So the assumption that we've made in line with the existing wastewater transfer agreement is that at the new facility, which is used by both the BPW and the county, each party will be responsible for a proportion of the running costs in proportion to the amount of flow that is sent to the facility. So under the basis of design criteria, both the BPW and Sussex County would send 1.75 MGD, average daily flow, to the facility. So we've made the assumption that the O&M costs would be split 50-50. And so when we look at the project lifecycle costs, the capital costs and the O&M costs for the option 3 concepts are the lowest. So it has the lowest project lifecycle cost. And that's the graphic on the right-hand side. You can see the variation in those costs. And then to try and bring together the two sides of the evaluation, we have the MCA score and the costs. And to try and give an indication of value for money, we simply take the MCA score and divide it by the project lifecycle cost to come up with a cost per MCA scoring point. And on this basis, being the lowest cost and the highest MCA scoring, the option 3 concepts would, based on the analysis we've done, would provide the best value for money for the BPW. An important point, I'd just like to clarify.
Go ahead.
Just a final point to clarify. The report doesn't include recommendations. We've presented analysis, and based on this analysis, this indicates that it's the best value for money. But at this stage, there isn't a recommendation or a preferred alternative.
The going back to option 1, capital cost is 23 million. Is that cost and for the upgrade needed in the plant to go to 1.75
Yes.
gallons per day, and then also the pump stations and so forth?
Yes.
Okay.
And the sheet pilings and
And the perimeter barrier.
Yeah, no, I meant, but the plant cost is what I want to make sure it's in there.
It does assume 4 additional cassettes.
One additional to bring it to 4. Yeah.
Yeah, well, 4 trains.
Yes.
And an additional oxidation ditch.
Okay.
Does 3A and B include dismantling the plant?
Yes, we've included decommissioning costs in all the option 2 and option 3.
Thank you.
Piggyback on the kind of the question Earl asked before, and this may be separate in terms of rate, like the volume, does that mean that the rates should go down because you're sharing in the costs and you're having more volume? So do we have an indication how this will affect the payer rates? Or will it have the opposite effect because you're taking it farther away?
So off of face value, all of the improvements have a cost associated to it. If the decision is made to harden that plant, I see it being, again, just kind of foreshadowing it be more of a bond at 23, 20, $30 million. I think there would be an impact on rates. I just don't know what that looks like until we kind of identify which path we would be going down, how long it would be over a certain amount of time. Then you go into like the 2A, B, and C option, or 2B and C option. And if the county has an influence in that cost at all for a capacity portion, that has another impact on it.
The only reason I bring that up, I might have shared the article around with others, but there's the city manager of Newark just sent an article around just, I think it was a town in Pennsylvania that turned their plan over to a private entity, and just there was a good upfront payment, all that looked good. The problem is now the ratepayers are paying twice as much for the same service. So that's all I'm looking out for is, if we go down one of these roads, how does that fundamentally change what the end user pays?
And I think that's what's happening now is we're having the hard conversation that nobody really wanted to talk about, which is the location of the plant, what the future has to hold in 25, 30, 40 years. There's money associated with every single option. It's a matter of, do we invest to keep the plant where it is today? Or do we move that plant? And then you have the option of going with 3A or 3B, which is to partner with the county where the plant's not there. Then your costs are kind of shifted. You have a capital portion of it, but now you shift to more of the annual cost, similar to what we do now with the county, where they pay based off of the amount of flow that they send to us, except we would have a share of their R&M cost of the plant itself, or the O&M cost of the plant itself. No matter how you look at it, if the ultimate goal is to either enhance that plant, to harden it for the future, or to move that plant, there's a dollar figure associated with it.
Yeah.
So Hans, if we do move in your direction, how do your costs compare to ours for an individual customer? Do you know?
You may recall the county has an unmetered cost based on an EDU, and our current rate is $80 per quarter, uniform across all 80,000 accounts.
But if there's an extension of service, that individual or community has a debt service payment plus the $80 per EDU per quarter.
That is correct, but that is, for example, if we create a new district, we're
Yeah.
just creating one in Mulberry down the road here. So they carry the debt associated with this district creation. Any treatment plant construction is carried by all 80,000 customers.
Unified sewer district.
So
If you look year over year, I mean, how do your costs change? I know it's kind of off the cuff, so.
over the last, since we have a uniform rate, which is about 12 years, until last year, until this fiscal year we're in, the increase per year annualized over these 12 years was less than 2%. That was not true for the last year,
Understandable.
but it was less than 10 for the last year.
But we'll be paying the same rate as all your other customers from the unified.
Or less. You were gonna say or less, I thought.
No, that question isn't, I don't think that is the way you wanted to phrase the question, because that would assume you are a sewer district, which you're not.
But we would be paying the same cost. I mean, I worded it wrong. That you pay at that plant to operate it as for hours as yours.
That is correct.
You're
It'll
not
be a
charging
flow-based-
yourself one thing and something.
The
else
cost
something else.
allocation will be flow based. So
Yeah.
if we both put the same gallons in, everybody pays half.
And what's the process you go through for rate increase in the future? How does that, obviously, it doesn't happen often, but what's the process you guys go through? Is that a county council process or something you guys
In
do?
this
or-
particular case, it is very similar to when we looked at the current agreements we have two flow-based cost share agreements.
Yeah.
One with the city of Rehoboth and one with Seaford. So they're strictly based on the eligible costs associated with operating the facility, period. Has nothing to do with what county council does, other than what we pay our workers who work at that facility. So the county council's impact on your rates would be minuscule because it's literally the raises we give under the collective bargaining agreement for the operators.
I think when we go into the public, not that this is a public session, when we go to the next review, I think having that kind of information as a foundation is something to be very helpful.
I mean, the life cycle costs in a way assume that because Manager Austin and I, we used the base model, what we, the county, pay to the city of Rehoboth, because the city of Rehoboth operates the exact same facility flow-based wise, 3.5 MGD. So we used their budget model for this fiscal year to come up with the numbers. So essentially, we used a real life example to develop the cost. So it's the life cycle cost has that baked into it, Earl.
And when it comes to, we're going to hear things and I already have about, supporting growth outside of Lewes and the county and everything else. You guys, I assume, have solutions for whatever you're going to do anyway, regardless of what we do here. Is that an accurate assessment?
We have to, I mean, like,
Sure.
we have, as a matter of fact, we had a pre-bid meeting today for a major project at Inland Bays. So, and we have several more coming at Inland Bays. We are waiting for a permit to get the Wolf Neck facility upgraded. So if nothing else happens, we're very happy with our agreement with Lewes Board of Public Works. I always said that.
Yeah.
I will say this to my grave because it works for both parties. We do have our 20-year growth covered. This gives the county operational flexibility, which is great to have when you operate two large land application projects.
I agree.
Like just to give you a perspective, the Inland Bays facility for disposal will go to almost 700 permitted acres and almost 500 ag partner acres. So that you're talking massive amounts of land.
What can be done on those fields? Because you can farm, you can till them, but can you use them for parklands?
If nothing happens and we continue the path we're on, we will upgrade the facility at Wolf Neck, reforest the fields, and the trail will be built. That's already agreed upon in our lease with the state. So yes, you can use it for passive recreation. You don't want to have, once you upgrade the facility, it's what's called public access, which means you can literally walk right by the facility with public access, zero buffers and zero, there's no restriction. And
No picnic tables or anything like that.
no, that's not. Public access does not
I
mean.
understand. No, I'm just being silly. Okay. But Austin, this is
Thank
a
you.
great question about rates. All of these options are going to require an increase in rates. Sounds like to me. I mean, even if we harden the plant, we're looking at a serious amount of money. You can't borrow all that much money that you don't have interest to pay on it.
Correct.
So if the very least, the interest rate is going to have to go back into the rates.
For as long as you would hold that debt service.
Yeah. So let's just call it general debt service. Whatever the rate is for debt service is going to go back into our rates.
It would be factored in. Whatever our debt service payment is on an annual basis would be
So
factored
it
in.
wouldn't, we could look at what our debt service payments are. I mean, obviously, we can't say in 10 years, a debt service amount is going to be the same. But I'm just saying, if we looked at today roughly, what a debt service for, well, 90, what is it? 98.5 for option one. How much would that be? And how much would it affect the rates?
Well, it wouldn't be the 98.5 because that's got the O and M cost there, which is coming out of your current.
No, that's right. It would come out, and you're right.
Yeah.
That's,
And again, you can
O and M cost.
you can factor it in from a cost basis standpoint, but how a rate designer takes it and looks at it from a fixed fee versus a consumption fee is a whole different.
No, I
you can come up
understand.
with a cost per.
I just
person.
didn't know if there was some way to just kind of make a rough estimate.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things to look at here is that under the O and M, the difference between option one and option three is threefold. Because the cost of operating in
Yeah.
a VR plant, you're having to replace the filters every 10, 12 years. That's millions of dollars. Blowers, all these other equipment, the energy costs of our plant is much higher than,
Yeah,
the
I
plant.
understand.
So,
And then that was what I was saying was if you take these numbers and kind of well, the capital costs, you could put an interest rate in, just pick one. I mean, that's reasonable. And then the O and M costs, you could then look at our rate structure that's current by Dawn and see what she thinks about that.
well, and, by gut feel, the O and M, based on the O and M, every option other than one is a reduction in rates, not that, but it's got more capital costs, which is
Mhm.
gonna drive rates up. So
I see, because
it's-
you're gonna have a new plant. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I understand.
I think you both say the same thing. We need to be able to have a meeting and say, here's roughly what the costs are going to be. And I know, I'm not talking about an official, here's your monthly bill kind of thing, but some kind of a gauge of what someone's potential, high, medium, low kind of thing. We're still paying for 2008 upgrades that we did.
That's how much longer do we have on that debt?
I believe it's 2027. It's
So-
2027 or 2020 or 2030.
No, I think it's 27.
I think it's 27 too.
We got 5 more years on that. By that time, the new plant will be built.
There you go.
If we build a new plant.
But if I put it on the 20,000 foot level. If you look at the debt service for option one and the option three series, let's just say that's they're the same. Let's just say that they're. Now, if you look at Reno, what it costs the city of Rehoboth to operate a 3.5 MGD plant. Take half of that, which is today's cost. Work it backwards into your number of users, here's your answer. That's what it would be if you.
Approximate.
implemented it tomorrow.
Okay. I mean, it's a number that you have to be cautious when you say it, but it's a number that can go out there and say, here's what the best estimate would be right this minute, given the rates that we know for, bond costs or whatever. And we know this is going to change, but at least it'll give you an idea that yes, any of these things are going to increase cost and increase rate cost.
Yeah, I mean, over the next 30 years, to
Mhm.
2050 or a little less. We have to do something. We have to have a new plan of some
Right.
sort
Right.
or rebuilt plant. And this is at least. We're
Yeah.
giving the options and seeing which one's the most feasible and cost effective.
I mean, they're given what we're seeing here. There's no option.
Yeah, right.
So
No, it's not
option
status
one
quo.
is
We
where
have
we
to
are
do
at the
something. We have
moment,
to
but
do
it
something.
isn't where we are at the moment, because if we are gonna take in all this other stuff that being built around us, we're gonna have to increase the size of the plant. Right?
Well, just a little bit. I mean, that's not the big.
Well, $20 million.
You're gonna have to harden it.
We have to harden it. That's the big thing. It's not the additional.
Well,
capacity.
$23 million worth. I mean, the hardening is one part of it. But we also, from what I understand, if we're gonna do 1.75 million gallons, we're gonna have to
That's
uh
not a big
So
chunk.
It's not a
If
big
it was
portion
just-
of the
It's
20.
not a big portion of it.
If it was
Okay.
just that, that wouldn't be
All right.
much of a hit.
All right, great.
Okay, so in terms of the next stages and moving towards identifying a preferred option, this is how we see the timeframe going forward. So having presented today, the next step would be the county will present the findings of the study to the county council, and that's scheduled for next week. And then the way we see it moving forward is that the BPW would arrange a special meeting to present the findings to the public, engage with community stakeholders and provide an opportunity for stakeholders to comment on the findings. And again, this is all before a preferred option is identified by the board. Now, as far as I'm aware, a meeting date for that is still to be determined. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to discuss that or whether.
It's number 2 on the agenda.
Okay, then I might just finish this up then. And then after that special meeting with the public, there'll be a further board meeting, at which stage the board would make its final decision on a preferred option for further design development. That preferred option would then advance to further design development, and that development would include field investigations modeling, including canal modeling, water quality modeling, conceptual design and permitting design stages. That's what we have. Thank you very
All right.
much.
Thank you. Very well done.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I really want to thank, the entire GHT team has been phenomenal. It's taken a lot of work to get us here. And the amount of detail and the patience that they've had has been phenomenal.
This is a great document. It's something we really needed and it was done well. And it's backed up by facts and not just guesses. So thank you.
Okay, let's move on to. So open forum general discussion on a date to hold a public workshop on this topic. So
I don't think Pete wanted to comment. Yeah. No, he's fine.
hi, Mike, you still there?
I'm still here. No, Pete was ready to take my place, but since we're just setting the meeting, let's press forward and I'll stick around.
Okay, so Austin, do we have any proposed dates?
The only thing I'll tell you is, Tom, do you want to let everybody know when you're going to be out of town?
Yeah, so I will be, I'm available up until the 15th of December, but then only after the 20th of January. So I'll be away out of the country for a while.
We can
Not
come,
for recreational reasons. Immigration related. So, so I'm available to support a public meeting up until and including the 15th of December. Otherwise, it would need to be after the 20th of January for me personally to be involved.
and press, you're leaving on,
24th of January. Yeah.
and obviously, we want to try to get it as soon as Hans, do you have a drop dead date for needing a decision? None? Wow, okay.
It's your facility, it's your project, it's your.
Right, no, I mean, to proceed forward on the county side.
There's obviously the urgency on the county is related to the funding we're using.
Right.
Which comes with certain deadlines, and anybody who knows anything about ARPA knows what the deadlines are.
So before the 15th, that only leaves us, well, next week and
2 weeks.
2 days after, or 3 days the week after.
Remember, you still have to send a notification out
Yeah.
to everybody.
And it's got to be 7 days notice, so. So actually, it's really got to be the 8th, 9th, 12th, 13th, or 14th. Anyone have any hard?
You're saying in December?
Yeah,
But remember, you have to, are we planning on sending a notification out to all customers about attending?
Yeah.
So that has to be done as well.
How long is that gonna take?
But it's just from a planning perspective,
Yeah.
like if you're scheduling it in 2 weeks and you say, you send something out tomorrow and people get it on Monday, the 5th, they have 10 days to plan. It's completely up to you guys.
well, I mean, because, I mean, based upon everyone's schedule here, we're looking at the 8th, 9th, 12th, 13th, or 14th, so.
The
City
8th
council
Yeah, there's
is,
already a workshop on the 8th of December.
at city council is the 12th, right?
Yeah, 14th is open though. There's nothing on the 14th.
Sounds good.
Anyone have any objections to the 14th? Going once, going twice, and
No, wait,
Not too late.
December 14th.
we would do this at the Rollins Center.
You have to confirm it.
Yeah,
I'll ask. Either Rollins or the library, obviously.
yeah, the Rollins obviously gives us Zoom capability, the library.
Okay.
Oh, is Tom, are you free the 14th?
Yep.
Okay,
6 o'clock,
That's what I was gonna ask.
is that what we're talking about?
So the 14th at 6 o'clock at the Rollins. And okay.
Right.
Do we have any questions from?
Do we have to, Mike, do we have to accept the report? Did we decide that?
You can, I mean, it's, that would be good if there would just be a motion to accept the report.
Accept it or receive it?
It can be accept or receive, just can't be approved.
It's not noticed on the agenda as an actionable.
Okay.
So we actually have it on next week's agenda to receive the report.
But if anybody has comments that they would like to be incorporated into the report, please send them my way and then I will get with Tom and Jeff.
All right, so call to the public, call to the press.
Are we gonna are we gonna talk to the public tonight?
No, just if there was any general.
Yeah, we're on.
There's no Q&A, and then Aaron is online. Would you like me to ask him?
No,
Well, we don't want to.
you can, but we set up a meeting with.
We're meeting with him tomorrow, so.
Send it back. I didn't mean to like. We plan.
We weren't.
Procedural question.
Go ahead.
The public meeting, is that basically informational, or are you expecting that to be like a hearing?
It's a workshop, just.
It's a workshop, not a hearing,
Yeah,
but yeah.
yeah.
It's gonna be public participation if that's
Yeah,
what the
that's-
question
that's-
is.
yeah.
And that's why we posted it on the website and we'll send the notice out and,
Aaron's until tomorrow.
okay, all right, then, in that case, do we have a motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, so we will post it on the county website on Friday for our Tuesday meeting next week.
And I will see you in Georgetown.
What time's your Tuesday meeting?
Starting at 10.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.